Welcome, I'm Dante St. James. I recognize some familiar faces already in our audience today, so thank you for joining us on Zoom Live. This is also being recorded to go to YouTube, to both the business station and my own YouTube channel at Dante St. James. Today, we're going to be talking about business insurance and what you actually really need in your case. And since we've got some people actually in the room with us today, it'll be a great idea to be able to ask you some questions about what you feel that you may need and what you've sort of been recommended, and also what your requirements are in your business from various programs, various requirements you've been told you need, and to give you a bit of an assessment of what it is you may need as well. Let's get that screen shared. So I'm looking across to my other screen here to make sure I've got the right thing on the right time. Awesome. Looks like it's going to work for us. So let's have a look at business insurance and what you really truly need with it. First of all, a bit of a quote from Paul Ramsey, a financial coach and radio host in America. It's not about insurance against possible problems. It's about savings for when problems inevitably happen. This is what I always thought with health insurance. It wasn't so much an insurance thing. It was just saying it was like a forced savings that made me save up for those things that I wanted to get done that weren't covered by Medicare. So anything from getting some like physiotherapy or some treatments for relaxation, or getting my glasses, which are not a Medicare thing, or getting my teeth done. So making sure that my teeth are clean and healthy and have been cleaned every 6 months. And it's a great idea. My teeth have never been better because I've actually had that insurance, a forced kind of savings that's made me be very aware of it. So what we're going to cover today is the different types of business insurance that are out there that you may want to consider. We're going to look at you evaluating what it is you may or may not need for business insurance, and also looking at what the compulsory insurances are, depending on what kind of business you are. So we'll have a look at that, and hopefully if you're up for it only, I might invite you to the stage to actually have a chat and really work through the kind of business insurances you may need for your specific circumstances. This is brought to you by Business Station and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program, in conjunction with Treaty Business Consulting in the Northern Territory, Regional Development Australia, Brisbane in Queensland, and Business Station in Western Australia as well. A bit about me, I work with the New Business Assistance with NICE program and the ASBAS Digital Solutions program right now. My own business, Clickstarter, and a couple of other businesses that I have as well have shown me the very big need to have these kinds of insurances. Google's Digital Springboard project also helps me to deliver some great digital literacy programs around Australia. I work alongside Treaty Business Consulting in Darwin in the Northern Territory, and then Facebook is who I was working with yesterday when I was down in Terrigal in New South Wales on the Central Coast, delivering training for small businesses from Facebook and Instagram, as well as Messenger and WhatsApp. So why am I talking about insurance? Well, I can tell you now that I am not a financial advisor, and you should absolutely consider speaking to independent legal advice, financial advice, taxation advice, or any other advice especially from insurance brokers. They're a great source of information on all this. BizCover particularly is who I would really recommend people to go to, because they have a really good picture of what small businesses actually need, and get that information from other people and check how the information relates to your unique circumstances before actioning anything you may hear from today. I'm just a mug punter who owns a few businesses and has gone through the insurance process a number of times and made a couple of claims as well. So I can bring you a little bit of a background of the type of insurance that different businesses that I work with need. And through my work with both NICE, the EFS, the Entrepreneurship Facilitators Program, and also through the ASBAS Digital Solutions, the kind of information you look for. Anna just asked me, what was the name of the insurance broker just mentioned? It's called BizCover. So bizcover.com.au. So they're the one that we often recommend people to go to in the NICE program, which is a new business incentive scheme that's designed to help people to get off the ground with their new business ideas. Now, you probably do not need all of the insurances that we're going to mention here, but that's not going to stop some of these insurance companies trying to sell all of them to you. It's in their best interest to sell lots and lots of insurance to offset the claims that are against the insurance they have to pay out on right now. But you will not, absolutely none of your businesses are going to need all of these insurances all in one, particularly if, as I'm suspecting, most of you are actually working from home at the moment. So a few basic principles There is no such thing as a one size fits all. Any insurance broker who's going to go, oh yeah, this is our pack that's going to deliver it to you. Now, funny thing with packs is the first time I bought a business pack, not through BizCover, it was another insurance. Excuse me, another insurer, and they said, "This is your pack. This is the pack you're going to need." I had so much stuff. I had cybersecurity insurance. I had public liability, professional indemnity. I had like contents insurance and building insurance. I was working from home. So I was working from home, paying for building insurance for a building that I did not own because I was renting. And I was paying for cybersecurity insurance when I didn't actually store anything myself at that stage. In fact, I didn't even have any clients to have any sort of storage of anything at all of their details. And when it came to the contents insurance, which was on top of all that, I didn't actually own any of the contents of the house, let alone of the business. It was all stuff which was, that was included with the house. So it wasn't mine. It was actually furnished house with furnished stuff in it. All I owned was things like my computers, my monitors, and probably my office seat as well was all I owned at the time. I was oversold a lot of insurance in the guise of a business starter pack, which was making me pay a heck of a lot. And now when I say a heck of a lot, this was the equivalent, it was costing about $3,000 a year. So you can imagine I was feeling a little bit, not great about that, considering how little I had to be able to throw around at the time. So I wasted a lot of money in my first year of insurance. Also recognize that under that no one size fits all, there's going to be some kinds of jobs you do which are a lot riskier than others. Some kind of businesses are more risky, not financially risky, but risky in their ability to cause problems. And this is where public liability comes up. So people who are running and actually hosting large performances with thousands of people, your public liability is going to be a lot higher than mine when I run a workshop of no more than about 15 people. So my risk is way lower than what your risk is. So do understand that depending upon what you're doing, and this can include people working with, I've got one particular client at the moment who's working with particular chemicals, which are very poisonous, but are used in the pest control industry. So those sort of things are very much driving his insurance up much higher than what mine would be. These days for my insurance, I'm paying $30 a month, which for me is like, about $360 a year. For a business, I won't disclose, but my business is well and truly in the 7-figure mark now. So that is nothing compared to what I'm making. In your case, though, you might find that you're very, very early on in your game. So paying that kind of money is actually, a significant investment. So hopefully you might be able to come up with some ideas to help you get a better deal from insurance. And also know what you compulsorily, that is not even a word, Dante. You need to have a compulsory insurance in some aspects, and that's going to come up a little bit later on as well. Let's hope my speech bubbles can work out better and not just form in my mouth and just blow up. Now, public liability insurance is a big one because this is the one that most businesses at some point are going to be asked to have. So, for example, I will have often see clients in my home office, or I'll see clients at a cafe or something like that. To do that, because I'm seeing people in person, that is requiring me to have public liability insurance to protect myself in case something goes wrong. Even if I'm on someone else's premises at a cafe, if my client falls over, breaks their arm, and their public health insurance, their private health insurance won't cover them, then because they were coming to meet me, even though it was on someone else's property, I could be liable for paying for their rehabilitation. Likewise, so is probably the cafe we met at. So it might be double dipping. It depends on what their insurance company wants to do. What it's basically there to do is to cover physical harm on premises and even in home businesses. Now, the home business part is it's like, well, I don't see customers in my home. I generally don't. Sometimes I do if I really know them well and I take the risk for it. But generally, I don't see customers in my home. So why would I still have public liability insurance? Because I still meet them in other places. I still meet them at their homes. I still meet them at their businesses. I still meet them at cafes and restaurants. I still meet them at the beach sometimes. Some of the greatest places I've met with clients have been on Cable Beach in Broome. It was amazing having a meeting while we're there sitting and watching the sunset. It was magical. But I'm liable for that if something happens while they're there. in a home business situation, it's not just about your customers and your employees or your contractors, even if you've got none of those things. It's about the guy who delivers your office supplies to your home. So you get some office supplies delivered in from Office Works, or you get a new computer delivered from JB. Your public liability insurance also covers for when that person falls over and slips on your front stairs in the rain and gets hurt. So that's the kind of thing you're covering. This is why so many government assistance programs, a lot of new business incentive programs, and a lot of anyone who's you want to do some kind of event in their venue, ask that you have public liability insurance up to a certain amount. So generally it's around about that $10 to $20 million of claimable value to it. In some cases, like I've got with mine, I'm in a big pool of a lot of people who are getting a combined pool of about 3,000 of us all pulling in for that $20 million worth. So if 3,000 of us all suddenly get a claim against us, we're in a whole, that insurance policy is in a whole lot of trouble, I tell you. So scenario one for public liability insurance would be, in the case of a customer coming into your premises, so let's say you've got a coffee van. Your coffee van has somebody who steps up to buy a coffee from you. They then you'd hand over that beautiful, lovely hot coffee for them. It slips out of their hand, goes all down their side, and they get second-degree burns down their side. That is your public liability there. So they may seek to sue you. They might go to seek to sue the maker of the cup, maybe. So they'll have public liability. They may go to seek the owner of wherever you happen to be parked. So it could be council property. They go sue the local council for uneven steps that cause them to drop that cup and burn themselves, if they get this kind of lawyer who's going to try and push all that. Now, you might think that sounds ridiculous, but we are the second most litigious nation in the world after America. After America, Australia is the place where all the suings tend to happen. They're a little bit crazy over there. We're not a heck of a lot that far behind them. So to be honest, these things do come up, and they come up more often than what you would like to think they do. Scenario two might be when you've got an employee. You've got your very first employee. Now you're working from a home office. So maybe I'm working over here at this desk, and there's a desk behind me, which I need to move aside so you can see properly. So I've got a desk set up behind me. And with that desk, I might have an employee or a contractor come in once a week. What happens is they get inside, they decide to go down the stairs. So I'm on the 7th floor of a building in the city. So they'll go down the stairs, they'll slip over, they'll hurt themselves. We have to get an ambulance in, and then they can't come into work for the next 2 weeks, and they can't earn money because they're a contractor. I'm not obliged to pay them money. Then they might go, well, you know what? You're making me work from that place, so I'm suing you for lost wages and damages and emotional pain and all those sort of things that people want to sue you for. So then you're covered at least for that kind of thing. If something happens in your property or to do with where you work, even if it's not your property and it's a rental, or if it's in your home, then you are covered for that. So the customers are covered, your employees are covered, and your contractors are covered. It doesn't cover you. Unless you're an employee of your own business. So if you have formed a company and you are the employee of that company, then your public liability insurance is likely going to cover things that happen to you as well. But then you also come under a thing called work cover, or workers' compensation insurance as well, which is another one we'll look at a little bit further down the chain. So hopefully you've got an idea of what public liability insurance is actually about. Hopefully that's very clear, because sometimes we're forced to go and get these things and they're saying, oh, you can't hold this workshop here unless you got your insurance. This is what they're talking about, public liability insurance. It helps you to make sure that you're covered when things go horrible, and they do go horribly wrong. Trust me, they do. Second one is professional indemnity insurance. This is not so much for people who are making things or who are selling things in a shop. This is more for those of you who are service providers and providing advice. So these are, this is not really about injury. This is not really about liability. This is all about indemnifying or protecting yourself from being the source of having to pay for losses that are related to the services you provide or the advice that you give to people. So let's take a look at a service to start with. Let's just say our first service is a car washing service. Now, a car washing service is outsourced from a car yard. The car yard usually deals with this car washing service and sends them 30 cars a day to wash every single day. So they're gleaming and shining in the lot, ready to be bought. So we've all seen that happen. Sometimes they actually go to the lot and wash them there. Now, what happens is if there's a week where that particular washing company can't come there because of some reason, it could be sorry business, it could be anything to do with COVID or anything like that. And then the car yard says, well, you know what? We haven't been able to sell any cars because our cleaners didn't turn up. So therefore, you know what? We're going to sue the cleaners for wrongful damage and losses because they didn't clean our cars. Would they have a claim for that? Well, I'm not a legal expert, but I'd say there's a pretty good chance that with the right lawyer and the right kind of judge who would actually look at that and go, you know what, that is something we can definitely link through to a reason. Now, would it actually fly in court? Don't know. I don't exactly know. And this is the kind of thing which probably wouldn't go through because there's nothing stopping them from getting in other cleaners. So let's just say those cleaners are now ready to get sued because they didn't do their cleaning and no cars were sold because they were filthy. That would be covered by the professional indemnity insurance that the cleaning company has. So the car wash people, they would have this insurance. So they'd be like, okay, any sort of legal expenses we have to come up with to defend against this are covered by this insurance, as well as potentially if there's damages awarded of up to $250,000 worth of lost car sales, well, then their professional indemnity insurance will cover that. So you can put that down to even someone who, for instance, is providing, let's say they're providing a wedding venue. That's another service. Providing a venue for weddings. That venue for weddings, they've double booked and they cannot hold that wedding now. Now, this wedding that was booked in there was bringing people in from interstate, overseas, all sorts of places. People have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars getting ready for this wedding and suddenly it's not there. You would see that the person, the bride or the whoever's paying for this particular event, this wedding, would actually have a case against the wedding venue for double booking and causing a lot of harm and a lot of loss of money to people who are in that realm. So people who had spent a lot of money to get there, they could actually blame the wedding venue for wrecking that wedding and the bride for working that wedding, for having to reschedule a wedding, spend more money, and then be able to sue against that and probably win pretty convincingly on something like that. So when it comes to these kind of things, we want to make sure that you really are insured for all these kind of scenarios so that you can go, you know what? I know that I can safely go about my business knowing that if the worst things happen, I'm definitely covered. Scenario two would be an advisory situation. So I'm an advisor myself. So what I've got to do is make sure I've got some adequate insurances that are going to cover this. So if I give advice to someone that says, go and run these Facebook ads, spend $250,000 on Facebook ads, and I reckon you're going to win a whole lot of new business and it's going to work for you. They run the $250,000 worth of Facebook ads, and guess what? Nothing happens. No one buys their stuff. They'll go, you know what? You just cost me with your advice $250,000. I lost a lot of money on this. I'm suing you not only for $250,000 I spent, but I'm also going to sue you for the fact that you gave me bad advice that caused me emotional harm. It's actually caused my business to be disreputable, and my account's been banned from Facebook based upon the things you said. So therefore, I'm going to sue you for that as well. Whew. That's a whole lot of suing going on, isn't it? That's a lot of legal action. This sort of stuff happens, particularly when there's big money involved. If it's like, oh, they advised me to run $50 worth of ads and I lost $50, that's not worth suing over. When you're starting to get to the hundreds of thousands of dollars and the millions of dollars, advisors, when they give really not well thought out advice or advice they're not qualified to give, that's when they get in trouble. So you notice I did a disclaimer earlier at the beginning of this video. For those of you who did not see that disclaimer was 100% that if you act upon any of the information I give you here, this is not financial advice I'm giving you. So disclaimer is saying that whilst I'm advising you as a business owner, I'm not advising you about financial decisions. You need to get independent advice from a financial advisor, an insurance broker, someone in that industry who can talk you through the ins and outs of it in a proper way, someone who has a license to give advice about what products and services to choose. This is of a general nature only that you're receiving today. So let's move on to business insurance. Now, business insurance is kind of that general insurance you think of, like your home and contents insurance. This is essentially the home and contents insurance that's for business. So it's business and contents insurance, and it has many, many different parts to it. Not all of these are the same. Not all of them are going to look even similar to it, and a lot of them let you add on parts to it. So let's just look at some of the scenarios you would have in there. This could include your building damage, contents being damaged or destroyed, damage to things inside your content. So damage to things like a laptop computer. It can include theft, glass breakage, and general property damage as well. So at the very beginning of it, if let's look at a scenario one, which would be theft. Let's just say that one night, a whole bunch of bandits broke in. They broke the plate glass window at the front of your shop. They came in, ransacked your shop, ran off with $1.2 million worth of stock, and you're stuck. You've got $1.2 million worth of stock is completely gone, and your front window is broken, and it's caused other people to come and loot it as well. You would have a claim against your business insurance if things like contents damage and contents damage, glass, and theft were covered as part of your insurance claim, your insurance premium. A second scenario could be one that's very, very close to the hearts of all Australians, is bushfire. Now, in the case of bushfire, flood, cyclone, earthquake, any of those kind of natural disasters, these are all things that can cause damage to buildings, damage to the contents inside those buildings, damage to glass, to brickwork, to pavements, to cars that on your property, and the general property damage as well, that the property has just been ripped to shreds. That can also lead to theft from looting, because a lot of looting happens after natural disasters. People go and break in and get stuff from shops because they think that, oh, well, they're going to get their insurance anyway. I might as well get what I want from there. So let's look at scenario one, which is theft. Theft could be, like we already looked at that, the people break in, they break your glass, they come in, they steal, you could claim against that. And you'll be able to claim, in most cases, for the contents that were stolen, the theft of the contents that were stolen, the damage done to your property in the process of stealing, the glass breakage, and any damage they might have done to your building or the general property around it. In the second scenario of bushfire, this is when natural disasters go through. What I'll do, because I'm in Northern Australia, and I know a couple of other people in here are in Northern Australia as well, where cyclone is a very real thing. So cyclone coverage is often not part of home and contents insurances, even if you buy them in places like North Queensland, Northwest WA, or the northern part of the Northern Territory. So what you need to look for is premiums that do cover that. Insurance that does actually cover things like storm surge, floods, bushfires, those kind of natural disasters that will occur, even earthquakes, because we are not immune to them. If anyone ever lived through the Newcastle earthquakes back in the, I think it was the 80s, you would know that we can get hit by earthquakes. It actually can happen in Australia. It's just very rare. We also have tornadoes in Australia. There's like a tornado alley in Australia. It runs down through central Victoria, through places like Bendigo, Ballarat, through those kind of areas, Maryborough. So we do have natural disasters just like America does. It's not just them that gets the prime claim to every natural disaster that happens. So in the case of a bushfire, you would have building damage, probably destroyed, contents just destroyed. You may have had looting after it because you couldn't get back to the property. Glass will be broken, the contents will be destroyed, and the general property is basically burned to the ground. So you have a claim on all those things as part of your insurance to be able to rebuild all those things, rebuild the building, repopulate it with office furniture, repopulate it with the machines that you lost, be able to put back in place all the things that were there before everything got burnt down. But then business insurance can come down to the most basic thing of all, which is your mobile phone. Your business insurance, just like your home and contents insurance with your house, can cover these things. When you go, oops, I dropped that and it's gone smash on the floor, you may not have got mobile phone insurance. I've got pretty comprehensive insurance from my home and contents insurer through my phone, which says, if I do drop and break my phone, I can replace it with a new one. And that's great. I like that I've got that insurance in there. For my business insurance, I've also got that as well. Now, I'm in a rental property, which is a residential rental property, which a portion of my residential property is used for running my business. So therefore, my business insurance knows this. It also knows I'm in a very low risk location. I'm 7 floors up. No one's going to Spider-Man their way up to my balcony and break in and steal my computers. But at the same time, things can happen. I can drop mobile phones, I can drop computers, they smash, they need replacing, need repairing. All those things can be covered with this kind of insurance as well. So moving on then from business insurance, we go to the next kind of insurance, which is what we call management liability insurance. And this one is probably not likely to affect you if, I guess, it doesn't happen where your business suddenly takes off and you suddenly become very successful. Management liability insurance essentially protects the directors of your company or the managers of your sole trader business, including yourself, against any sort of allegations of mismanagement that may cause loss of money, loss of investment, all that kind of thing. So the first thing we're going to look at is scenario one, which is a sexual misconduct allegation put against one of the managers in your business. Now, it could be yourself. What this does, it does not pay people off. It's not insurance to pay people off. What it is insurance that covers things like the legal costs involved in defending against that kind of allegation. So if the allegations happen, there's sexual misconduct, sexual harassment, areas of like, breach of trust, breach of confidentiality, all those very, very strong sort of management things that quite happen when, very egocentric people are working in higher power positions, think they can get away with everything because they are basically, they think they're little gods in amongst their businesses. So you would have, in that case, the ability to defend either yourself or your fellow staff members who are in management against those scenarios. Doesn't necessarily say that it's going to, if they lose, pay out the damages to that. That is not covered by management liability insurance. It just covering the processes of it. So your business is protected against these allegations. Scenario two will be something like defamation. Let's just say that you run a blog online. And your blog, you happen to mention about this business that you hate and they're horrible and they gave you a bad experience once, and you recommend that everybody should not go there because that person who runs it is a dirty, rotten scoundrel who steals money from children, right? So it turns out that this guy is not a dirty, rotten scoundrel who steals money from children. He goes, you know what? You have defamed my name. You have told everyone around town that I'm a dirty, rotten scoundrel who steals money from children, and therefore I'm going to sue you, and rightfully so, because you got angry on a social media post and spread it all around. He shouldn't have to suffer because you had one bad experience that you weren't willing to talk about, except to have a bit of a rant on socials. So in this scenario, you will be protected against those kind of silly things you say on social media, where you are slandering someone or you're defaming them, or what you do is called libel. So you are committing libel against someone as well. This is pretty important stuff because it allows you to protect yourself against that part of your business. Maybe it's your husband, just saying, it's usually guys that can't keep their mouths shut. They have to have a go. They have to have a rant. And they end up someone one day calls them on that. It's like the guy who's a loudmouth in the pub who's always spoiling for a fight. And then one day someone does give him a fight and he's flat on the ground within 2 seconds. Same's going to happen with that. Generally, the husband of the business who cannot keep his mouth shut. He says something finally, which he's now responsible for the consequences of saying what he said about someone else, usually a competitor or a lot of time his brother. Scenario 3 is what we call employee fraud. So this is not where you are fraudulent. It's where one of your staff may have been fraudulent and they have caused a customer to lose money, or they've caused a business to lose money. You are then protected against that loss. So in this kind of business management liability insurance, that you as a director are protected from having to pay for this. So too is your managers, or those who worked in that scene where they kind of let that happen without even necessarily knowing that it was happening. So it allows you to do is to make sure that you are covered. 100% what we want to do is ensure that you've got the ability to be able to be covered and that you are able to be protected from having to front the costs of the fraud that happened and then paying all that stuff back. So if you've got insurance to pay it back, it doesn't have to come from your pocket. Next kind of insurance is cyber liability insurance. This one's come big, hasn't it? It seems that every other day we're hearing about another business that's been ripped off or taken over. This ransomware where you've got people going, I want $7 million in Bitcoin transferred to my wallet immediately. Otherwise, we're not going to let you back into your data, and we're going to release all the personal details and passwords of all your clients for the last 25 years. So you're going, oh, what do I do? What do I do? How do I fight this? And then you just go, you know what? At the end of the day, I can't do anything about it. I'm just going to have to pay that $7 million in Bitcoin. And you work through your insurance company to actually facilitate that scenario paying out after oodles of legal and police advice that says you're going to have to do this. Otherwise, you're going to be facing larger criminal charges for all sorts of problems and suing from your clients and all your customers who have had their data exposed. So that could be scenario one, where your website is hacked. Your website is hacked and it's just completely taken over, and someone has decided to turn it into a Turkish freedom fighters website that's designed. I mentioned that only because I've had it happen to me before. Turkish cyber army decided they would take over one of my websites. They hacked it, they got in, they changed everything on that front page. They left a bit of code that let them get into that site again and again and again. No matter how many times I blocked them, they'd be able to get in and change that file that changed the very front page of the website. It wasn't until we found out where they were and able to block their IP address range, and were able to do all kinds of things that we could stop that. But in the meantime, having that website hacked was actually stopping us from making money. We couldn't take any orders for a particular product we had on there. We couldn't, and those orders usually come in at around about 250 orders an hour. So you can imagine how much this is making us lose, like umpteen amounts of money. It was just horrible. And so we had to essentially, work out a way around it and change it. And then we lost a whole lot of money and did not have any kind of method in place or insurance in place that would help us to cover that off, so that we go, oh yeah, you know what, we're fine. We can pay that. We're all good. Thank you very much. The next scenario is a customer data breach. And this is where, for instance, all the personal, financial and personally identifying information from a particular client or customer is breached from your website, from your systems, from your customer relationship management system, is leaked out to a hacker who's wanted to sell it on the dark web to people who are looking for more data points about certain Australian individuals in a certain geographic location. This sounds like it's ridiculous, but it actually happens every day. Every single day you'll get something like this, where you'll have a data breach that's happening. Even the biggest companies in the digital world, from Google through to Facebook, through to not LastPass have been breached yet, but some of the biggest companies like Amazon have been breached. Insurance companies within Australia have been breached. So having this cyber liability insurance means that you're able to pay for the expertise to get this thing fixed, especially in the case of a website hack. You can pay the legal costs and the fines coming from the Australian Cyber Security Centre and judges that will rule against you. That you can pay for the fines that you've had to incur because of the lack of security on your websites and your different digital systems. And then finally, we look at what is called ransomware. And I put an E there that shouldn't actually be there on ransom, but that's okay. Let's pretend it's French. Ransomware. So in the case of ransomware, we're talking about something where someone comes and takes over your computer, puts software on it that makes it unusable except without an encrypted password that only they can provide. They have the answer to that question, but you can't get it. So the more you try and break through it, the more you're locking it down to a harder to unencrypt password string. So what they do then is say, you want to get into your records, you're going to have to pay us $50,000 in Bitcoin. It's always Bitcoin, isn't it? Because it's not traceable. Well, it's sort of semi-traceable, but not easily traceable. So what we do, we either go and pay that or we fight it. So we get in the people to try and work around it. Now, very often that's not possible because they've used essentially a valid username and password of somebody to get into the company's details. which is why we're always being asked in big companies to change our passwords again and again and again and again and again. And what do? We don't do it. We just get stuck and go, oh, no, no, no. My dog's name plus a 123 on the end of it, that'll do. Or my grandson's name and and the number one after it, that'll do. Or how about Happy Sunshine Jesus Friendly Rainbow X? Like, oh yeah, they'll never guess that, but you've got it written down on a post-it note on your screen at your desk. Make sure you follow these principles of cybercrime, because one day this could be you. Cyber liability insurance is really for those who are holding a lot of data on other people. If you've got 20,000 records of your customers and you've got their dates of birth, you've got their middle names, you've got their mother's maiden names, and you've got their credit card details, and you've got tons of personally identifiable information about them hidden away on your computer, and someone attacks you with a ransomware attack and you can't get in there to protect that stuff, but they can get in there if they want to. They have got you by the short and curlies, and they've got a hand around your neck ready to say, you are my puppet now. You're going to do what I tell you to do. So that's really cyber liability insurance. It's not necessarily for everyone, but it's something that's very important to those who hold a lot of personal identifiable stuff in their computers and in their technology. Now, as we look at tax audit insurance, this particular insurance does not necessarily pay for your tax you need to pay back. So it's not going to pay for that. You're not going to be able to go, oh, I owe $35,000 to the government. Here you go. My insurance will cover that. That's not what tax audit insurance is all about. Tax audit insurance is about the help you need to be able to comply with requests from the tax department. So if they come to you saying that you need to provide all these receipts for all these purchases that you've claimed a deduction on, and it says, well, yeah, I can do that, but I'm going to need a bookkeeper to come in and help me dig through all these to be able to find that. That sort of thing is covered by tax and audit insurance. The second scenario could be where, for instance, you going, you know what, I need to go to court with this because I feel like I'm being unfairly targeted by the tax department and unfairly fined or unfairly treated by the tax department. So therefore, I need to get a lawyer to help me out with this stuff. So if that's your scenario, then this is what tax audit insurance will help you to pay for. In scenario 3, the significant staff investment that's needed in order for you to comply with new financial laws and tax laws, and you need to hire a lot of staff to help you out to get you out of this mess just for a short-term period. This tax audit insurance can help you to get those staff in so you can pay for what you need to be compliant. But of course, it's not going to pay ongoing for these staff to stay with you. It's only for that project and needs approval that are absolutely necessary as part of the compliance that you need to provide to the ATO to fulfill your obligations as a business within Australia. Now, there's one form of compulsory insurance. Now, this is not for people who are coming in from the NICE program who've got public liability as their compulsory insurance in which to participate within the program. This is compulsory insurance, which is at a nationwide kind of level. It doesn't matter what kind of business you are, this one could affect you, and that's workers' compensation insurance. Now, if you are a sole trader and you are just working on your own, you do not have employees. Now, you can have contractors, but you don't have employees. That's fine. If you don't have employees, then you will not be required to have workers' compensation insurance. You only require it when they are your employees. You actually employ them in your business, and they're on a casual, part-time, or full-time basis with a regular, all that normal stuff you need to do when you employ someone, like pay superannuation, pay-as-you-go tax, all that sort of thing. And in this case, also having to cover any workers' compensation claims they may have. So scenario 1 is where there's a first aid kit that's required, first aid that's required to be done in order for someone to do this. So you need a first responder to come, an ambulance to come to help someone who has had to go to hospital very suddenly because of an injury in your workplace. Bear in mind, this needs to be not your contractors, not you personally, unless you are an employee of your own company. We're talking about sole traders and small businesses here who haven't got to that company level. We're talking about that first aid from a first responder where you have to pay someone to come out, let it be an ambulance, a home doctor, a physiotherapist there to come to the actual venue where you are to help someone be able to walk again because they have done like a crinked muscle or joint somewhere that's sort of incapacitated them for the moment. That sort of stuff is what workers' compensation insurance helps to pay for. This is what we call work cover. It's essentially all work cover is covering injuries in the workplace, and in particularly in scenario 2, the costs of that injury. So that's getting someone off the hospital, getting them fixed, getting them back in a cab or an Uber, or getting them getting them transported to and from the places they need to be in order to get the medical treatment and the corrective surgery, if required, that they might need to get. It covers that kind of thing. Now, again, I cannot stress enough, this does not cover individual sole traders who break a fingernail at their desk or break an arm or wrist at their own desk. That's because you are not covered by any of this simply because you're not an employee. You are the owner of the business. So you are liable only to yourself. So are you going to sue yourself? You can't actually do that. It's not possible to do in this country. Scenario 3, though, goes a little bit further than just the injury costs. It goes into the return to work rehab costs. So whilst it might cost someone to get a broken wrist fixed, it might cost them about $10,000 in getting that wrist fixed. It might cost them a certain amount in hospital charges, transport charges on ambulance, all that kind of stuff. And then also cost them even more when it comes to then bed costs in hospital, and then the follow-up stuff. Now, it may take them, if they're using, for instance, if they're someone who works in an office and needs their wrist for the work they're doing, they'll need to return to work rehab payments. And this is something that pays people to get the rehabilitation work they need, whether it's through an NDIS provider, National Disability Insurance Scheme provider, that's helping them on an ongoing basis for a permanent disability they may have. But if it's only a temporary disability, so it's someone who might have broken their wrist, they'll be back in action again, but they need extensive 6 months worth of rehabilitation of how to use their wrist again properly to become as good as they were in their previous job back again. That's the kind of thing that workers' compensation pays for. But repeating my earlier things, this does not cover contractors. This does not cover you as the owner of the business. This only covers employees, and then they've got to be actual employees, pay-as-you-go, tax-paying employees. So do you reckon you can get that across? I think that's pretty clear when it comes to what you need for workers' comp. So let's look at a few scenarios. Let's just say your business one, you are a sole trader, you have an ABN, you work from home. What is the kind of insurance you're going to need to do? And I'm saying when work from home, this could be someone who, say, works at their computer. They might be a graphic designer, maybe. So they're working from home. They're not having to go anywhere to meet people, but they do need to kind of catch up to meet with clients from time to time, either at home or at the cafe that is 2 streets over from where they live. What are they liable for? Well, number one, they probably need to look at something like public liability insurance, because every business should. If you're conducting business at a cafe, that cafe is right to ask you for public liability insurance before you can work at that cafe. Now, very few ever do. I don't think I've ever had a cafe ask me to provide my certificate of coverage so I can do a meeting with someone at their cafe. But if you're going to do some work at a cafe, they actually have a right to ask you for your COC, for your certificate of coverage, to do that there. No one does, because we're not as litigious a country as some places, but they could do it. They could say you can't work here unless you provide your public liability certificate of coverage. Now, the second thing that this particular business may want to do, if they're a graphic designer who's doing things that involve people's marketing, which is helping their business to make money, is to get professional indemnity insurance. Now, in this particular case, you would want that professional indemnity insurance because this kind of business is actually a service. As a service, this business can either make or break the marketing activity of a particular type of business that comes and works with them. So if that's then the case, they can take legal action against a graphic designer who didn't provide what they said they would provide, or could not deliver on the promises that they delivered that they would get across and make happen. So that's one kind of business. Let's just call that the sole trader who works from home. A second kind of business could be a mobile bookkeeper. So they're working with numbers, working with zero. They're going from client to client, meeting them in their homes, and they're working mobile. What is the kind of insurance that this kind of person would need? Well, firstly, public liability, because they're working inside people's homes. I can guarantee those people in homes probably don't have their own public liability. So she would definitely need her public liability sorted and ready to go. Once we're absolutely sure that her public liability is sorted and ready to go, then we move on to what is next, which is usually, because she's in an advisory position providing a service, professional indemnity insurance is an absolute must for her. This is something that she cannot even think about avoiding, because at some point, someone will ask and say, you know what, you've lost me a ton of money, because sometimes money just disappears. Could be the fault of the bookkeeper or not. Could be bad advice, could be anything. But money, sometimes things just go wrong. So if she needs to defend against that in court, she needs to know that she can afford the legal costs that come with doing that. So if we're not talking about, the idea of public liability and professional indemnity, what else may she actually need to run her mobile bookkeeping service? So she may really require not so much business insurance, but she may need to actually look at car insurance that covers business use, because not all car insurance necessarily covers business use. This is one you may need to look at. If you're using your car for business, you may not be covered whilst you're going out to a meeting. That's a real wake-up call for some people to go, oh, but it's covered for when I go to coffee with my friends. Yeah, but you're not doing a business activity. She's not really going to need much in the way of management liability insurance, but she has a lot of remote access to people's zero tax accounts, so they can log into that particular business's or that person's details from the tax department. They can also link themselves up with problems that occur due to people hacking into Xero or hacking into MyOb or one of those systems that someone's using to do their bookkeeping on. Now, if this is the case, this is going to need cyber liability insurance as well, because she's dealing in digital stuff and their mobile systems, and she's using things like unsecured Wi-Fi access points at cafes and other people's unsecured Wi-Fi access points in their homes. She's actually, every time she's switching on and hooking up to those systems, she's becoming someone who is increasing her footprint of cyber risk. The more you do these things, the more at risk you happen to be. So cyber liability insurance may be one for her as well. Tax audit insurance, not so much, because she's the one who's helping people out with tax. So that should cover our business number 2, who's the mobile bookkeeper. The third kind of business we'll look at is an electrician with an apprentice. So I would say the first thing that the electrician with an apprentice needs, because an apprentice is an actual employee, even if he's an apprentice, still an employee. So let's say this electrician, she runs her electrical business, and she's got a young male apprentice that she works with. And they work together really, really well. But one day, male apprentice falls off the roof as he's installed solar, and he breaks his collarbone. He's going to be out of work for 6 weeks. How does young apprentice make money? Well, that's through the compulsory work cover insurance, or the workers' compensation insurance. So that's the number one thing that we're going to see that particular business, our woman who's an electrician with an apprentice, be able to handle that. Then aside from that, we may actually look at some other kinds of insurances, like not so much cyber insurance or management liability. We're looking more towards things like business insurance, because an electrician's van or their ute is their castle. Not that many Sparkies these days don't have like a Mazda Raptor Ranger kind of thing. Well, I thought Mazda, some Ford might have a Mazda BT50. That's the right one, I'm pretty sure. And you can tell I don't own a ute, right? So they might want business insurance to cover that car, including, and the big one when it comes to apprentices, and this happens all the time, is poor apprentices save up money from having to work overseas and doing grudge work in paddocks and all that. They save up enough money to buy their tools. And that is the first thing that gets stolen when the apprentice doesn't know to lock down their tools, either take them inside at night or lock down that case so hard there's too much money and effort for someone to try and steal that off the back of their ute. So that could be a good one, having some business insurance to cover that loss. Professional indemnity insurance. This one could be a real one that they need simply because they are providing a service. So whilst they are installing physical things, they're also providing the service of installation. And that comes with the need to indemnify against work they haven't done well. So think about it. You've had a tradie come in, they've done a really botch up job of what they were supposed to do. Then you go, well, that was really crap, and you can't get it fixed. You can go through, builders, ombudsmans, and go through all sorts of different self-regulated, places that may or may not ever get in touch with that particular business to give you any sort of voice. But you can sue against that as well. So a bit of professional indemnity and public liability insurance is what they all need, because let's face it, the electrician with the apprentice is going to people's houses. The apprentice often comes to their house. So there's a lot of stepping into properties involved, which of course attracts public liability insurance. And our final business that we'll look up today is what I call the dressmaker. So the dressmaker can be somebody who is literally making dresses in their home. They're using their Singer sewing machine, or their brother, or whatever the brand of the sewing machine happens to be. They've got an overlocker, they've got a bit of a production line going there, and they just happen to also have just put on a casual employee to help them on Thursdays and Fridays when people want all of their different work done for gala functions on the weekend. So they found this particular guy, and they found, this particular, I don't even know, I completely blanked out there for a second. Sorry about that. If you had the dressmaker who's making those clothes, and they've got this person completely going into making a dress, say for a wedding. For a wedding, then you've got the ability to be able to say, well, if they're making this dress, and I've got this employee who's making these dresses with me, then they're able to go down a path where they are liable for producing a dress that isn't quite perfect. That dress is not perfect for that particular occasion. Let's just say it's a bride having a wedding dress made. Then that bride could actually sue against that particular dressmaker not making that dress right for their day, and that would be coming under not public liability, but professional indemnity. So they're providing a service. Now, really good, Tamara's got a great scenario up here with a life coach who receives client applications and later client contacts with basic info like address, contact details, receive cyber insurance. So you are still going to be liable for how that sort of stuff is treated, Tamara. Great question. So you've got received forms. They need to be put through a form that's that is protected by HTTPS encryption, or SSL it's naturally called, which is some secure socket layer. Now, if it's not, and you don't have that all set up, and there's a good chance that someone could actually get that information from an external hard drive, that could be something which you may have all sorts of regulatory problems with it, but also someone could say, you didn't protect my stuff the right way. You didn't actually protect my public and my professional and my personal information in the correct way. So that even if it was on an external hard drive or in your laptop and someone got in, they hacked it and saw it, that could be a problem. Now, you've got some further information there in saying that it's saved on its external laptop, a hard drive, deleted from the actual laptop and email, especially they run online coaching programs. Professional indemnity, absolutely you should have. Public liability, of course you should have that. I would say that your professional indemnity will cover a certain amount of cyber stuff, but where it comes into where it's, if you're protecting yourself by making sure that information is really well protected and covered, and it's not going down into make it easy for people to hack in and get that information, then you may not need cybersecurity. But I would say in the case where, if it's not on your laptop, if it's not on the email, and you've put it away into a really good, safe place, I'd say you're probably doing everything you possibly can to ensure that your data is protected and that your customers and clients' data is protected. So I would say, Tamara, I would start off without cybersecurity insurance. Again, I'm not a financial professional on this. You should speak to someone who's actually in there to tell you what the real legal potential is there. But I would say, yeah, maybe you probably don't need cybersecurity insurance just yet. If you're dealing with hundreds and thousands of people and you're dealing with very expensive stuff that's got laptops that are going with you constantly, they're in motels using Wi-Fi connections that you have no control over, then you're going to be much more open to cyber attacks. So therefore, you probably should just go, you know what, I'll need that cyber insurance just in case. But in some cases, you may find that your your professional indemnity insurance is actually going to be covering that kind of stuff. So hopefully that answers it. I actually had life coach as my next one. So you were like preempting me there, Tamara. So I won't go too much into the life coach bit of Business 5, but Business 5 was basically that thing. So where you're carrying people's data in there, I would say if you're not doing all the things, like you seem to be doing all the right stuff. So if you weren't doing the right stuff, then I would say you probably need cyber insurance. But I think you might be okay since you're going to extreme lengths to make sure that that's all correct and all right. So yeah, I think you're going to be just fine with that one, Tamara. Simone and Tamara and Anna are still in the room. I've had a few people drop in and out. I think we have Peter. Also, Paul's still here. Sorry about that. Anna's asking, if I ask my podcast guests to sign a release form which contains their full name, email address, and signature, sometimes address, I save them in a file on my desktop. That sort of stuff is not personally identifiable information in terms of it's not exposing their address, their phone number. It's just a name and an email address and a signature. It may have a physical address. I would still save them in a file that's at least somewhere that's safe and protected. And you make sure that you have your computer with a password on it at the very least. If you have, even secondly, I'll have like my one has I have to put in either a passcode or I have to use my fingerprint to get into it. So that's one of those ones where it can be really, really useful for you. So thanks for that, Anna. Great question as well. I think you can probably all, basically cybersecurity insurance is for those of us who do not to go through the hassles of trying to work with securing all this sort of stuff. So I think you're going to be fine with the cybersecurity. So the big ones, I think, for most of you on this call are going to be public liability, which you're going to need for just about everything you do, or professional indemnity on top of that. But if you own your premises, if you're renting a premises for your business, if you are in a shop, then you may need full business insurance, which is that kind of stuff where you protect against fire, flood, earthquakes, all that, the stock that's in your shop and in the warehouse out the back. All that sort of stuff is more so for those businesses that do have a premises. That's where you saw like a lot of businesses go under in areas of New South Wales and Victoria that were affected by bushfires. We saw a lot of that kind of problem because people did not have insurance to cover that stuff. So when the inevitable bushfire came flooding through the Bega Valley in New South Wales, it took down so many different businesses that just weren't ready because they never thought that it would ever happen to them. As we know, things happen. So what's next with all this? You can speak to other people about cybersecurity. I do a lot of cybersecurity, but we have some really good cybersecurity people. You can speak to people about what kind of insurance you need. And you can book in, if you've never done one before, a first consultation with the ASBAS Digital Solutions Program for zip, zero, null, nothing, free. So you can get that one for free. Simone, I'm on another program with you, so I'll do that with you another way. I can get you that particular one. With the second consult, $44, and for any after that for $66. But Simone, you're on that other program. We do it a very different way with that one. Anna, another great question. How do you determine the liability coverage amount? For instance, for the podcast, can it be covered for $200,000 or millions? Usually, public liability should be at least $10 million. So just that little bit of it. And that's because in podcasts and public broadcasts like that, you can get covered for things like slander, libel, all those sort of things. So you may find that if you say something that's wrong and someone sues you, it's not going to be for $200,000. It's going to be for $1 million plus in terms of reputational damage and all that. So you may need to look at increasing that to the 10 million. I know a lot of government programs and a lot of venues who want to run stuff like that or want to run like live versions of podcasts in their venues will ask you to have at least $10 million in public liability for anything you do on someone else's property. So I really do hope that makes some sense to you. I think I need a big sleep because I think I sort of went off on a really weird tangent there for one moment, but I hope that really gives you some idea of not necessarily the confusing world of insurance, but it gives you an idea that it's not actually necessarily a bad thing. And there are ways of getting it together. So for instance, if you work in a digital capacity, so you're doing a lot of digital IT kind of work, the Australian Computer Society membership at $30 a month or 300 and something dollars a year includes both public liability and professional indemnity insurance. If you work in the marketing sector, if you're working as like a marketer in sales, you can join the Australian Marketing Institute. I think that works out about $420 a year and includes public liability and professional indemnity insurance. So if you're a graphic designer, that is the perfect one that you get on. Go and look at in your industry to see if there's a particular group, like a peak body or some kind of industry association that may be able to offer those things for you, because it can make it a lot cheaper and you won't have to go and get this separate insurance. You may actually be a member of something that already has this kind of thing included into it. I didn't even know that my AMI marketing one was in that place as well. Any suggestions for podcasts? I would look for any sort of like broadcasting groups, all that sort of thing. Podcasts are technical in nature. You may actually be able to go in for the Australian Computer Society. So you can find them, Anna, through acs.org.au. So acs.org.au might be a good start for you. I know they definitely would cover it. Podcasting is also a form of marketing. So the Australian Marketing Institute, which from memory is ami.org.au. Let me just get that right before I turn you down the wrong path. Come on, computer, you can do this. You can find it. You know how to work the internet. Yep, ami.org.au is also the one for the Australian Marketing Institute. So that might be a cheaper way of you getting those two insurances without having to go down and get them from specific insurers. Lots of those different ones. I know fitness has them. I know that some artists collectives have them as well. So yeah, it'd be really great for you to look at those and see if you can find those out. In the meantime, though, I'm going to go and make myself a nice strong coffee before my next call so I can get through this day. I got in at like 2:30 a.m. last night and was back up again at 6:30 this morning. I really need to sleep. So thank you so much. It's NAVA. Oh yeah, that's right, Simone. I think I've actually spoken to you about the NAVA insurance before. So that's actually a really good one. National Association for the Visual Arts. So that's a really good one as well that gives you a cheaper access to those kind of insurances. So thank you so much for joining me. I do hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.